In the intricate world of progressive rock, where complexity, precision, and innovation are the highest virtues, few guitarists have earned the level of respect that Alex Lifeson has. As the driving force behind Rush, Lifeson spent more than 40 years pushing rock guitar into uncharted territory. He wasn't just a technically brilliant player, he was a perfectionist with towering standards, someone who believed the guitar was an evolving art form that required discipline, imagination, and constant reinvention. And yet, behind his polite Canadian demeanor, Lifeson carried strong opinions. He had little patience, some would even say contempt, for players he viewed as lazy, limited, or worse, proudly ignorant of their instrument's potential. For Lifeson, guitar wasn't about image, flash, or easy shortcuts. It was about exploration, storytelling, and striving for more. Welcome to Golden Stars, where we pull back the curtain on rock legends. Today we uncover the 6 guitarists who, according to industry insiders, made Alex Lifeson's refined sensibilities recoil in frustration. These aren't casual dislikes. These are musicians who, in Lifeson's eyes, represented everything holding rock guitar back. Few rivalries illustrate the divide between progressive rock and grunge as starkly as this one. Kurt Cobain, Nirvana's reluctant frontman and the voice of Generation X, symbolized a movement built on rejecting technical excess. Where Rush embraced complexity, Nirvana embraced simplicity, even imperfection. According to music journalist Michael Azerrad, Lifeson once remarked to fellow musicians, "Kurt represents everything wrong with rock's anti-intellectual movement. He's turned incompetence into a virtue and convinced a generation that learning your instrument is somehow selling out." What infuriated Lifeson wasn't Cobain's emotional honesty, it was the deliberate celebration of rawness over refinement. While Lifeson had spent decades crafting intricate chord progressions and advanced solos, Cobain found global fame with what Lifeson reportedly dismissed as 3-chord therapy sessions. The tension peaked in 1993 at an industry event where grunge's rise was praised as the death of pretension. Witnesses recalled Lifeson visibly bristling, muttering that they were celebrating the death of musical ambition and calling it authenticity. For him, Cobain represented regression, rock stripped of its artistry and turned into what he allegedly called willful ignorance disguised as integrity. Next is a clash not of eras, but of philosophies. The Edge, U2's effects-heavy guitar magician, built his sound through layers of echo, delay, and atmosphere. Millions loved the grandeur. Lifeson, however, saw something else. According to Guitar Player magazine editor Jas Obrecht, Lifeson once told session players, "The Edge hides behind pedals and studio tricks. Real innovation comes from technique and composition, not how many delay units you can string together." What bothered him was the reliance on technology to mask what he felt were basic technical limitations. Lifeson was composing symphonic guitar parts with shifting time signatures and complex harmonies. The Edge, he argued, was looping simple riffs through effects racks and calling it art. At one guitar clinic, the divide became glaring. Lifeson focused on raw playing. The Edge's segment, witnesses recalled, was nothing but pedal demonstrations. Lifeson allegedly quipped that this was button pushing for guitarists who don't want to practice scales. For him, the Edge symbolized a dangerous trend, the triumph of gadgetry over musicianship. From technology to tradition, next we land on Malcolm Young of AC/DC, the rock-solid rhythm guitarist who prided himself on simplicity. Millions hailed Malcolm's steady riffs as the very essence of rock and roll. Lifeson, however, saw them as a prison. Rock journalist Murray Engelhart recalled Lifeson's blunt remark, "Malcolm's made musical limitation into a religion." He's proud of playing the same 3 chords for 30 years, when guitar playing should be about constant growth. Where Rush pushed boundaries with jazz fusion and classical elements, AC/DC embraced what Lifeson derisively called caveman rock. He was baffled that deliberate simplicity could be celebrated as purity rather than stagnation. At an award ceremony in the 1980s, when AC/DC's unchanging formula was praised, Lifeson reportedly turned to his manager and said, "They're celebrating musical stagnation and calling it authenticity." For him, Malcolm Young embodied rock's anti-intellectual streak, proud of never evolving. Perhaps the most ideologically opposed rivalry of them all, Johnny Ramone of the Ramones. The punk pioneer turned rapid-fire downstrokes into an art form. Fans saw rebellion. Lifeson saw deliberate incompetence. According to punk historian Legs McNeil, Lifeson once told Canadian journalists, "Johnny turned musical ignorance into a movement. He's proud of not knowing how to play when guitar should be about constantly learning and advancing." What galled him wasn't just the simplicity, but the philosophy behind it. Lifeson believed punk wasn't just rejecting complexity, it was destroying music's potential for growth. He labeled it musical vandalism. At a 1977 industry conference, when punk was hailed as authentic, Lifeson reportedly fired back that rebellion without skill was just chaos. To him, Johnny Ramone embodied organized ignorance. In the late 1980s, Guns N' Roses reignited hard rock with Slash's blues-soaked solos and swagger. But to Lifeson, this wasn't rebirth, it was retreat. According to Guitar World editor Brad Tolinsky, Lifeson once told peers, "Slash is recycling blues licks that were tired 20 years ago, and everyone calls him innovative. Real evolution means moving forward, not retreating into nostalgia." Slash's dismissal of prog rock as pretentious only fueled the fire. Lifeson reportedly snapped back, "Some players prefer nostalgia to innovation because learning new things requires actual effort." To him, Slash wasn't a torchbearer. He was serving what Lifeson called comfort food for listeners afraid of challenge. And finally, the guitarist, who most infuriated Alex Lifeson, Angus Young, AC/DC's electrifying schoolboy showman. The issue wasn't Angus's energy, it was what Lifeson saw as his philosophy. Rock writer Clinton Walker recalled Lifeson's biting words, "Angus has turned limitation into a circus act. He's made ignorance entertaining and convinced audiences that refusing to grow is somehow authentic." The final straw came when Angus dismissed prog rock as music for people who think too much. To Lifeson, this wasn't just an insult, it was a betrayal of everything he stood for. He allegedly told friends, "Angus built a career celebrating everything wrong with guitar. He's turned stagnation into entertainment." For Lifeson, Angus Young represented the ultimate corruption of rock guitar's potential, anti-intellectualism dressed up as showmanship.